Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we're going to be sitting down with Vincent daily to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing. We have 1948's The Three Godfathers by John Ford, 1996's Twister by Jan de Bont, and finally, newly released, now in theaters, Twisters, directed by Lee Isaac Chung. So we're going to get thrown around a little bit. We're going to step back in the Old West. Let's see what Vin has to say about it. Stay tuned and enjoy the show. Vincent Daly, how we doing, brother?
Tommy T, how's it going?
It's going okay on this side of the table. How was your week of movies, man?
Week was pretty good. I mean, you know how the week was. You did all the homework this week.
I watched all three.
Yeah, he's very proud.
I did all my homework.
Definitely tough to tie these movies together, even with Twisters being a spiritual sequel to Twister. Very different movies. I feel like they lost the. There's maybe a thread of adventure between all of these. A little bit of a journey in all of these, but I don't know.
There's some action in all three, I guess you could say.
The real shame is that Three Godfathers wasn't called Three Tornadoes, though. So that was the only thing I was worried about.
I would really shot for. I think there's a lot more connections to Twister and Twisters than other people are saying.
Okay.
I can't wait to talk about those two.
Yeah.
I almost feel like we're in a minority because we saw Twisters together.
Uh-huh.
You had already seen Twister. I went home the next day. I watched Twister.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started doing, like, what are other people saying?
Sure.
When
What's
I started
the
listening
buzz?
to some podcasts, and I'm a little surprised at some things that have been said.
Absolutely.
That being said, Three Godfathers,
Mm-hmm.
John Wayne, John Ford. I was pushing for this one.
You were. You were.
I'm going to be excited to talk about it. Before we get into that, any opening notes for the week? Anything that you feel that we need to touch on beforehand, or no?
I don't think so. I have some trailer notes between the next, this episode and maybe the next episode, but I guess we could save that for the end.
No, what trailers did you? Bad trailers or good trailers?
Just trailer notes in general. I've been showing up too early to these damn theaters.
We have been. That's our biggest mistake lately.
Yeah.
When we've been going together,
Yeah.
I'm like, what are we doing? We know it used to be 20 minutes. It's half an hour now.
Yeah,
if you're in Dolby.
Easy, half an hour. I would say, I don't know, real quick rundown. Heretic with why can't I think of his name now? It's A24. It's
with Hugh Grant.
Yes, I think that's interesting because it feels like an A24 film that might come out like 2015. Might be a sign of them kind of shifting a little bit. We had the news that A24 is trying to do more quantity over quality a little bit, especially with the HBO Max contract.
Quantity over quality?
Quantity, yes.
Really?
Pump out more. Yeah, I think that's what the decision was.
Well, I think they had an influx of cash. My gathering, though, is they also want to get into larger things. So they are dipping into TV.
Yep.
And like Civil War was the highest budget,
Sure.
for them. And I feel like when you say 2015, what do you mean, like vibe wise?
Yeah, vibes. It feels like a smaller scale project. It feels like a more boilerplate type of script.
Right.
Just like, oh yeah, guy traps him, and then it's like it's like a test for them to get out.
Yeah,
it seems like more of the type of projects that A24 would pick up.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hate to say it, but the Megalopolis trailer, I kind of like it. I know I'm morbidly excited to check out Megalopolis, but I feel like it's fitting into the mess that you and I might defend, a la Cloud Atlas or something like that.
Yes. There was another film the other day that I popped up in Cloud Atlas, and I should have thought about.
I forget what that was. You mentioned that.
I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But there was something that happened.
That gave Cloud Atlas vibes.
Oh, you know what it was? It was Kinds of Kindness.
Oh, very true, very true.
Different stories, actors playing different characters, but in the same film.
Right, the repeat, yeah, absolutely.
But there was something else that I felt that we were against the grain a little bit on. And this episode, I think we're going to be against the grain on something.
Yeah.
But okay, all right, so that film.
Afraid from Blumhouse looks to be a new low, even lower bar than Mithrigan as far as let's use AI as like capitalizing on fears.
So crap, you're expecting crap.
Yeah, just absolute schlock. Despite really hating Smile 1, I think Smile 2 looks a little bit better. I feel like there's an interesting play there that as a celebrity getting the curse, there's something to eyes being on you all the time that I feel like plays a little bit more stronger as a sequel.
I'm intrigued at that main actress, too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting Florence Pugh vibes from her.
Sure.
Like, as far as style is, and like she's talented, it seems.
Yeah. So maybe a silver lining there, but most of all, I've been in love with the trailer. I don't think it's going to be a great movie by any means.
Okay.
But I think the second cut of the Trap trailer from M. Night Shyamalan is just like a really well-cut trailer.
It is.
I think it's electric, like as far as editing goes.
Even the music. I think down to the music choice,
Yeah.
it makes almost me want to go see the film.
Right,
You know what I mean?
Where in actuality, that's such a rug pull of every M. Night Shyamalan movie, where it's just like, yeah, it looks kind of good. Turns out it's really not that
This
great.
one is different, though. yeah. This one has a little bit of a different thing going on. Like, again, it's even intriguing me a little bit. Where his last one, which was just like Night House or something. Not Night House,
Knock at the Cabin.
Knock at the Cabin. I had zero interest the entire time on that one.
True.
But this one seems like it might have something. I do feel like the trailer reveals too much.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's also like, we couldn't get into it in our original M9 episode, but it feels like if we did another M9 episode, I'd cover the later films exclusively because it feels like he knows people expect the twist, so now he leans into the twist, and like the twist is just the content.
Oh, that's
of
interesting.
the film.
I kind of like that theory.
And you see that in Trap, that it's like, oh, they're just kind of giving it away. But that's also...
It's more so about the ride now.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
So, I don't know. Not that I'm super excited for another M. Night episode. We kind of squeezed the rag on everything good from his filmography. But yeah, that all I'll say is, because Trap, the first trailer for Trap didn't look good at all. I'm very cautious about M. Night anything.
Yeah.
Even his daughter. We didn't cover Watchers, but apparently that came out as a bad movie.
Right, we didn't cover that.
Yeah,
That's correct. Yep.
But just something about that second cut of that trailer. I think it's pretty.
It tries.
juicy.
It's good.
Yeah. So
And
that's it.
Okay. Well, I want to make a comment. I think because I've been thinking about this a little bit of how off we are. Well, again, going against the grain a little bit of one thinking that this has actually have been an okay movie year.
Yeah, right.
Where almost anybody in this whole critic space completely disagrees, and everyone's just talking about 2025.
Yeah,
I was listening to another show that like I like the people and I like the hosts, and everyone's like shitting on the rest of the year. And I'm thinking there's some stuff to be excited about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, no one things on the top of my head. I am totally concerned, but I'm totally going to go see Gladiator 2.
Oh, sure. I mean, Denzel alone.
Of course. But things I'm really excited for the War of the Rohirrim. The Edgar's film is coming out, Nosferatu.
Absolutely.
And then the one that I've seen two trailers, and right away, I in the theater, I was just like, we're both excited for this, even though you don't know this film, which is the movie from the guy who did All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yes.
And again, I forget the director's name now. I forget the name of the film.
Oh, yeah, wait.
It's a one-word
it's something
film.
in November. Man, what is it? No, it's not
but a Vatican, but a drama Vatican political kind of film.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And by a high class director with high class actors. No one's talking about it.
I like
I'm
seeing
so
him
excited for this.
getting work out of the German space because he directed a lot of German films originally.
Right.
Before All Quiet.
Dude's got skill and style.
Yeah.
Like, this looks like this is going to be the best Vatican film, I swear, since
Oh
God.
boy. Yeah, it was the Vatican.
Da Vinci, the second Da Vinci Code. I'm telling you, that is a low key. That is a so bad it's good movie.
Oh, Angels and Demons.
It's scrumptious.
We gotta do a Da Vinci Code special. I was actually talking to someone else about the Da Vinci
really?
Code this week. Yeah.
But anyway, that director's kicking off. I like that. Beetlejuice 2, I'm not even excited about. Some other people are. But
Yeah, I mean, I'm
stuff
excited
coming down the pike.
just to do in the format of what we do on the podcast, cover some Tim Burton stuff, and again, like M. Night, squeeze the good Tim Burton out of that.
Right.
But yeah, I totally agree. And just circling back, I mean, I don't have to tell you to gush over Lord of the Rings, but War of the Rohirrim, the more I research into it, it looks like I'm almost in disbelief of how a project like that was funded. Like, I think it's awesome.
By Warner Brothers. By like
how
a major...
unique it is. Yeah.
I know, it's weird. And Brian Cox is the main guy in it, voice actor. They pulled this big-time animator. It's like, what does Warner Brothers want to get into the anime, Lord of the Rings?
Exactly.
It's like, how did this come about?
I know.
But it did, and I love it, and 0 people are talking about it.
right. Even in Lord of the Rings spaces.
What about in your spaces, anime spaces?
No, not really. I think mostly because in anime, it's so what's new, what's hot. I don't feel like there's a lot of talk. The director folks for this War of the Rohirrim comes from Ghost in the Shell, both the original and the very good SAC series, a standalone complex series. But like an excellent anime director.
Right.
Not the creator of Ghost in the Shell, but like tied to all the good Ghost in the Shell.
Right.
So
he's got chops. He's got skill.
Yeah. So, it's mind-boggling. I feel like we're in the outlier when it comes to our good streak in like March, April that we talked about. That it was like, this is a hot year
for some indie stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess people don't see it.
I know. I'll tell you about something with you anime guys. Well, first of all, The War of the Rohirrim is the most perfect film for us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Lord of the Rings,
right,
me,
it's
and anime you. I mean, we're definitely going to go see it together.
Yeah.
But with you anime guys, I feel like you're all about finding the nuggets or the one that's hidden from mainstream. So I feel like an anime Lord of the Rings will almost be looked down upon from you people because because it's too big, it's too showy, it's too flashy, it's too mainstream, and you guys are all about finding the not mainstream stuff. You know that you have to go through the weird corners of the internet to even find it.
So true. It's so true. Well, I think that's where I'm. This goes back to probably a review barely anyone listened to, but when we covered a movie called The Deer King, I'm repping for when animes make it to a feature-length production because so much of the industry is either you go after TV or you don't go after anything.
Right. Or you don't go out of Japan or something like
exactly.
that. Like you want some American market stuff going on.
Yeah. So when I see that, I'm like, wow, Warner Brothers is putting significant money towards this. Hell yeah. That's great.
Absolutely.
So I guess we'll be in the outlier as well. Also, talk about a missed opportunity of not saving the Lord of the Rings animated films, the Rankin and Bass ones.
Totally would fit.
It would have been such a perfect slot.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Wasn't thinking on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take a jump back to 1948 and total tonal shift from what we were just talking about.
Yeah, right.
So 1948, this is directed by John Ford. This film is called Three Godfathers. Okay, so I have some opening notes just to set the stage.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, one, I just want to say right off the bat, I think 1948 is not peak John Wayne, but the best year John Wayne ever had.
Really? Wow.
So in the 30s, he's doing 9, 10, 11 films a year because they're silent. There's these B movies, you know what I mean?
Right,
it's 3-dayers or whatever they're called. Then that's in the early 30s. 39, he does Stagecoach, which is great. And he's still doing 2, 3, 4, 5 films a year a little bit, even in the mid 40s. And then 2 to 3, it starts, it's more popular. Those films start to go down a little bit. 1948, he has what we covered last week, which was Red River.
Yep.
And working with a great director, Howard Hawks. Okay. Then he's also working with John Ford in Three Godfathers, which we'll find out. I'm telling you right now, I like the film. And then also in 1948, works with John Ford again, and he starts the Calvary trilogy with, was it Rio something? Or no, Fort Apache, I believe it's called.
Okay.
And that starts off the John Ford trilogy of Calvary, which is a film in 48, 49, and 50.
Wow.
All pretty well received.
Interesting.
So I think 48 is just a great year for John Wayne. I think it's a big entrance as far as just like
cementing him as the star. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I went back and watched, was it a 1947 movie with him? called Tycoon, not a Western.
Mm-hmm.
I watched another one from 1940.
Wow.
Loved it. Called The Longest Voyage.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Not a Western as well?
Not a Western as well, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So I've been going to, like, I'm 40s John, now I'm really going on to 40s John Wayne, favorite John Wayne. And I think then 60s. I think it goes 40s, 60s, 70s, 50s.
Interesting. Why 60s?
60s, 50s, he doesn't do too many Westerns, believe it or not.
Really?
50s is big time, well, because it's post-war.
Oh,
So he's doing a lot of World War II stuff.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
I just watched one called On the Island or Island of something where a plane goes down. He was the pilot, and it's like a survival movie, and then another crew has to find their crew.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, a lot of war stuff, right? And then in the 60s, he just goes full bore for the most part in Westerns, and we get some great Westerns. 70s, it gets a little bit, some good Westerns, some bad Westerns, and then we get McHugh, one personal favorite of Brannigan, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're repping it for Brannigan.
He gets into some other stuff, but I'd say 40s, I'm learning. I would stay away from earlier John Wayne because it's like, who wants to watch an older movie? You know what I mean? I want something newer looking, give me something a little bit better.
Absolutely.
And now I'm realizing that, no, there's performances here. He does some of his best acting when he's younger.
Yeah, when the legend forms, basically.
Yeah, he's better at just emotions and things like that. He's not this just, I don't know, older guy with his, I don't know.
The Duke persona.
Yes, exactly.
That he takes on.
So anyway, loving 40s John Wayne. Love poking around even outside of podcasts.
Yeah, I think that's great. And also a tough spot. We're dedicating July to both Westerns and John Wayne, thinking they're inseparable, but he probably does have, what would you say, maybe like 30%, of his films
It's crazy.
are not Westerns. So.
So that was a lot. Anyway, that was just kind of John Wayne, early John Wayne. What I've been thinking of.
I love always hearing about the different movie pursuits that you're going into, and just kind of like keeping for yourself too. So much of the podcast is like, I watch it, I make it content. So I kind of respect that, And
I like to just take notes. John Wayne I'm into, so I want to take notes. If you ever come at me in the future, that's why for this I'm like, Three Godfathers, it's on the list.
It's on the list.
This Tycoon movie I was interested in because I was getting sorcerer vibes almost.
Oh, okay,
because when I see it's about like he's a railroad guy in South America. And it's all about trying to do a tunnel instead of a bridge, and there's dynamite. People are getting hurt, and
it sounds exactly like sorcerer.
Yeah, it turns into a love story and stuff like that. Long Voyage Home from 1940 was better. Anyway. 1948. It's called The Three Godfathers, and I'm not done setting things up.
Okay. You got it. My hands are off the mic.
The Three Godfathers was a book that came out in 1913.
Yes.
There was a silent film called The Three Godfathers that came out in 1916.
Mm-hmm.
John Ford then came out with a film in 1919, a silent film called Marked Men. Mm-hmm. This film is a redo of The Three Godfathers.
Yeah.
It's one of the ones that they think is lost then, by the way.
Yeah. I found this 1919 Marked Men, also kind of cool name for a movie, completely lost to time.
It's one of those ones that's like 50 of his films or something like that.
Yeah.
Then another film in 1929 came out called Hell's Heroes.
Bingo.
Okay, that's another film that takes this Three Godfathers aspect. Then in 1936, a version called Three Godfathers, with three spelled out, came out.
Yep.
Now in 1948, Three Godfathers, the number 3 comes out by John Ford, and I think this is the last time it's actually tackled.
Yes,
okay?
yes.
So that's what I have for this film. It's the first time I saw this film was in February of this year.
Yes.
So it's one of the most recent John Waynes I've ever seen. Didn't think it was going to be good. Didn't like it. I've seen the film 5 times now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Watched it 5 times.
Wow. Interesting.
That being said, John Wayne, big director John Ford. Vin, why don't you just set it up for us? We'll take it back and forth.
Well, definitely, this is my first time watching it, and also the first John Wayne film that we've covered on the podcast that I haven't seen before. As far as the other Wayne films that we've covered, it's all been stuff that we've tackled in the past, and also kind of I've known I've liked as well. What actually made you jump into this for the first time? This was just checking it off the list or going through it?
I think what it was, I was going through John Wayne stuff, and I said, I really need to explore. I went down to how much I watched, and sure, I watched 20-ish, 22 John Wayne films.
Right.
I've seen some of them 6, 7, 8 times.
Yep.
I said, let's start really chipping away at some other stuff, though. And this one had, I think, an overall good Metacritic rating.
Okay.
Because I can't always trust Rotten Tomatoes. I can't always trust IMDb.
Yep.
So Metacritic, I was like, this is a relatively good story. Let's just watch it. And I had heard of this film before. I was like, Three Godfathers. What is this, a damn comedy? It's going to be cheesy. Again, 1948, which movies in the 40s, I didn't realize, I just haven't given myself to the 40s yet.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I said, screw it, let's go for it.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it. At first, not thinking I liked it. It's going back and forth in my head. I'm just like, I've never seen my initial thing is I've never seen a movie like this. Watched it a second time, a third time, and by the time the fourth time and fifth time, I'm really love this movie.
Yeah.
And where it takes you and how it does it.
It is very dynamic, and I think that's why I was able to appreciate it about it as well. Yeah, folks, this is yet another John Ford joint, which I'm glad to get on the site, and you really can see the masterful hand at work in a lot of elements here that I'll tune into in just a second. Like Tom gave a wonderful breakdown, the film is a series of multiple adaptations of the same story, which all come from that 1913 novel of the same name. And without reading the source material, you really can see the archetype common among that there. The only one that actually technically two, but the only others that I was able to find in the long, basically since prior to or pre-1950, this story was just getting adapted.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it was just like everyone loved it. Only thing I'll add to that is
say it.
Yeah.
I'll let you say this.
No. I'm gonna let you say the other one. This is absolutely what inspired 2003's Tokyo Godfathers, an anime by the legendary Satoshi Kon, and same kind of setup, kind of a riff on Three Wise Men in a different type of setting.
In modern day Tokyo at the time?
Yeah. It's definitely a little bit more fantastical, as comes with anime, but
right.
Satoshi Kon, from Paprika, so this guy is all
crazy.
very imaginative.
Yeah.
So, Tom, you gave a pitch for this one in the parking lot of Twisters that I love, and I can't tell you how much I agree.
Oh, really?
It really is. I think in a good way it represents it. Only really one other film past 1950 that this represents is
Fox's hit in 2002's animation hit Ice Age, starring Ray Romano, is loosely based on the Three Godfathers story, apparently.
It's so fantastic. So, if any of these, kind of strike your fancy, this is one to check out because I feel like something so, I don't know, fundamental as this Three Wise Men set up, but put in a different setting is exactly what I always kind of preach about. Let's make something interesting and do something interesting with our setting. When it comes down to Three Godfathers 1948, that Western setting definitely does play a role in how our characters are depicted, how stakes unfold in the actual journey, and kind of going from there.
I want to just highlight something that you said there.
Sure.
It's called Three Godfathers, and you did say once the Three Wise Men. And we should just state, that this is a bit of a Christian allegory of the Three Wise Men.
Sure.
Not exactly told, so you're not watching just a telling of
right.
the baby Jesus.
Yeah.
But it's loosely kind of toying with that idea.
Absolutely.
And stuff.
Some of that is done through allegory. Other aspects just kind of represent in the framework of the story as well, in just that it is about individuals maybe burdened, but also ultimately gifted with this child to take care of. So I think spinning this with the Western and as far as my kind of curiosity, I'm curious about Hell's Heroes in 29, that basically gave Ford this Western spin. And I'm definitely curious about 1919's Mark Men, because I'll tell you what, we've commented on preservation in the past as far as these old films. Nothing kind of infuriates me more than just not being able to check out a movie. And if anything, I'm now more curious about this, no less from John Ford. So,
and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them in that era.
It's a shame. I think the statistics also are 80% of films before 1930 are lost as well.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Definitely a sidebar, but for another time. But interesting how much this story was electric back then, and even still respected, post 1950. Described as a Western take on the Three Wise Men story, Three Godfathers stars John Wayne, Pedro Armendariz, and Harry Carey Jr. The story balances many moral themes, which lends to a softer tone than you might expect, but feels on the cusp of the type of westerns we might get in 1950, where characters matter. I feel like a little bit more than just the setting of gunslinging or kind of getting this like western, cowboy fantasy. The challenge our characters face to rise above the extraordinary circumstance that they're put in is the heart of the story. However, its kind of parable spin isn't clear at first, as even John Wayne is acting out of character. These three men beginning a story as outlaws gearing up for a bank heist. Now on the run and running out of resources fast, the crew finds themselves in desperate survival, made only worse by giving these selfish criminals a baby they have to care for. Quickly, the story shifts to kind of a heartwarming comedic scramble, still having these elements found in the earlier part of the story, but now, as these newly minted three Godfathers have to raise a kid, kind of pokes fun at the scenario of them not having an ounce of maternal instincts in any of them, and also like acting how they would if they were real like cowpokes back then, like not being able to read and like having like literally no clue about maternal instincts. So, but don't let that comedic spin turn you off, because I feel like you introduced, Tom, as far as this is a movie that has a lot of depth to it. I feel like genres are being able to be juggled fluidly in this, almost like a Bong Joon-ho or something that we would talk about more recently in like postmodern film being all types of genres.
Yeah.
This has that quality.
I'll tell it. That's what shocked me the most, because again, the first time I'm watching this, it's like I don't know if I love this or hate this.
Right.
And then by the end, it wins me over. And time again, when I was watching this through the year, I'm realizing it's constantly, it kind of whips you around, and then all of a sudden. But it does a good job. We have bitched about it a lot, maybe with horror, when it tries to juggle a lot of genres. We were talking about this just the other day with the Fly Me to the Moon, Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum, where it was trying to do three genres, and it should have stuck to two.
Kind of soured the tone, absolutely.
It was trying to do too much. And with this one, it shouldn't work. I mean, I'm watching this in the beginning. I mean, one of the first words out of John Wayne is just like, "We're not making friends, we're robbing a bank." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm in."
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this John Wayne? Yes.
In the hunt for evil John Wayne. Yeah, absolutely.
So you're watching it for a bit, and I'm just like, "Holy shit, this is a good Western."
Yeah.
And there's a chase scene that's like feels fast and raw and pretty good. 20 minutes later, then it's just. Okay, is this a comedy? Is this like a buddy comedy?
Right.
20 minutes later, you're like, is this an incredible, like, darker survival story?
Right.
It's not like Goody Two-Shoes?
Yep.
And then 20 minutes later, I'm just like, what is this, a feel-good movie? Am I supposed to feel good about this? It whips you around, and yet each individual stage, because I really think there's such four defined acts in this film almost, that somehow the way they get you through it, I'm in for every act, and even though we have tonal switches going on, by the end, and when it's all wrapped up in a bow, I walk away saying, I want to watch this again. And I did time and time again.
Yeah.
Very impressive how somehow he manages those things. Because as soon as it turns comedic a little bit, or even I think some people would just be like, oh, what is this, Christian allegory? What are we just...
Sure, kind of an eye roll, yeah.
Even the tastefully done. John Wayne's not even about it at first. He doesn't he's just like, get that Bible out of here. Like,
yeah.
You know?
Or no, he has a line, he's just like, I'll do this before I get religion, It's just like, it's great.
Juggled brilliantly, really, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that adds to a quality of the film that it has good pacing. I feel like sitting through some moments where the survival elements are clocked up, and they're on the run in the desert. I was worried it was going to drag too much, but I feel like through really some solid performances all around, it was able to kind of shake things up in a way that before I knew it, the movie was over, really. So, and on that note, I think the film is full, chock full of great performances, but my favorite by far was Ward Bond playing...
favorite by far?
Oh, yeah. Wow. Playing Marshall Buck Sweet. What a name.
Pearly.
Yeah. Pearly Buck Sweet. Amazing. It really boils down to his introduction of why I love it so much. I feel like that is just like a dynamite scene that you just feel John Fort's mastery at play.
There's more going on that's really happening. Yeah,
absolutely. How information unfolds, how it goes from fun and lighthearted to we're maybe in some deep shit.
When his wife is talking to the crew,
yes.
he's looking at you can tell he's taking in information and processing and thinking about it. It's
absolutely. And also, just what that scene does to give us clues to things that we'll tune into later on in the story, pieces of information,
Right.
Whether it's the name of the town or that there's some, maybe some danger on the trail nearby and whatnot. All of it is able to do exposition without being clumsy in the slightest. So I just really love that introduction, a fantastic introduction that just you just see John Ford knows how to set the stakes of his film, even with a softer tone that it's going for.
Yeah, real quick, just because that opening scene is pivotal, kind of, and then it takes a shift at the very end. Were you like, what is this meet and greet?
No, I was in love with that scene right away because I knew. Okay. I think I was still hooked from John Wayne being like this hootin' and hollerin' type of outlaw,
right.
which was just felt like so different for him once again. And I was just kind of chasing that, but I just love that element of just how the scene twists, and Ward Bond just plays a great foil to our outlaw
yes,
characters.
He does, yeah.
Him being on their tail also gives us an interesting plot developments to shake things up. Again, moments in this film you think you might be a little bit bored by it, just even if the predictability of this kind of Three Wise Men setup. How he's able to shake things up is a result of him assuming the worst in these criminals, which couldn't be further from their newly turned leaf. And that plays as a dynamic factor here between the characters. As far as John Wayne goes, I feel like he has a pretty decent performance here. I feel like the moments that grab my interest are when he's wild and crazy, which is just like, you just don't see it from him. Even among his crew, he's like the one that's probably going to mess things up because he's that crazy. But those moments kind of break away after the first 30 minutes. I think the mark is when John has a long kind of monologue about what goes on in the cave that they find the baby. There is a long stretch that he is given some room to really act. And once again, like we not to parrot what we were saying in Rev River last week, but there's son of a bitch can act sometimes.
Yes,
you know what
yes.
I mean? It's beyond just the Duke persona.
I like the performance all the way through because we do get different Waynes in here. I don't know. It's even like, yeah, he is raising his voice a little bit more. I like the beginning Wayne where it's just like we're just sitting in for a great little Western here.
Yeah.
I like when we're just stuck at the coach a little bit, at the covered wagon. And then, towards the end, not quite the end, then when we see him, really going through it.
Yeah, actually struggling as a character.
I freaking love that, too.
Yeah,
So all the stages of this, it's a platform for him to act in different ways.
Yeah.
And it's enjoyable to see because it's not that 70s Wayne. You know what I mean? He's got some range here, and it's awesome to see. I personally think it's one of the best performances for him.
Sure.
I'm going to be a little hotter than you, but...
Well, something I was thinking about is kind of comparing it to Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges, earlier in his career, you see him trying a lot of range, but then after a while, he kind of, especially
Settles
in the 2010s, he settles into the dude, but also settles into whatever accent he was using between the True Grit remake and like R.I.P.D. Like trash like that. And I just feel like, I don't know, I can't say for certain. It's exactly what July's going to be about, kind of exploring his career. But I feel like there's just a moment that, not that he's just riding on or sitting on his laurels or just kind of riding the persona he has, because frankly, an actor working that long has earned that ability. But I feel like this still strikes a chord where it's like, he's not in that yet.
I think because it's youth.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's in his mid-30s here, I want to say. Maybe late 30s. And I think just age slows you down a little bit. You gain a little bit of weight. You have age on you.
Yep.
And you get into that 60s John Wayne that a lot of people think of when you think of this guy.
Absolutely.
It's been a blast going into the 40s
Yep.
and seeing this young guy and give his inflections a little bit more oomph and things like that.
Absolutely.
But no, through and through, I like each individual kind of Wayne that we get in this film. I'm hands down in for.
Sure. Beyond that, though, I really don't have too much to say otherwise than that. I feel like it's strengthened characters, but maybe the briefness of my notes comes from the fact that I did predict a lot of the story, just in the sense that everyone knows, kind of the story of where it goes.
Right.
I feel
really okay.
I feel like it's interesting. This movie is interesting and worth a watch ultimately for the fact of how it blends all this together.
Yeah.
In that it's like, you're exactly right. Like, you're almost expecting not to like it, but not that it wins you over, but it's so unique and so novel that it's like, okay, if anything, the three wise men kind of framework, the three Godfathers framework is, the rails to keep us on a forward progression in the story. And then we get all these different elements that spice it up a little bit and shake our understanding of that. I think, a perfect example is, again, right in the elevator pitch of this, that these three men are outlaws. They're not good people. So I feel like burdening them with this, responsibility that requires the utmost selflessness is an interesting development there.
Which is why I like the name. So when John Ford did this first time in 1919, that's why Marked Men.
Maybe didn't connect.
No, yes, but I like it now. I like the name now, knowing the story. The one that was also remade in 1929, Hell's Heroes. Totally makes sense because we're dealing with great characters here.
Absolutely.
And John Ford had a great quote, and I can't find it now, about what he wanted to happen with these characters, and it was beautiful and kind of said a lot.
Sure.
A couple of the character notes, and I like that. You kind of, there's not much to say because you're along for the ride.
Exactly.
And you do either like the ride or you don't.
Right.
I wouldn't say people always shy away or feel weird about the, three wise men or the Christian aspect to it.
Right.
It's not delved into super heavy. We're not dealing, you know what I mean?
And if anything, in John Wayne specifically, his character in this is confronted by that. He's not. He's anti-religion. So he's definitely confronted by having to stand more morally when this character is a criminal otherwise.
Right. So. Exactly. I just wanted to make a couple notes then, if you're kind of wrapping up a little bit on other characters. John Wayne's kind of right-hand man here is Pedro.
Armendariz?
Yeah, Armendariz. He plays Pedro Rocaforte or something. Anyway, Pedro, loved him in this.
Yeah.
Him and John Wayne together, too. He was funny, but also he was just great.
Yeah.
I thought he was just a great pair with John Wayne, and he held his own next to this guy. And then Harry Carey Jr., it says in the beginning that this is introducing Harry Carey Jr. He was already in a few projects, like he was in Red River. He was in some stuff in the past. This is his biggest role he had. And then, of course...
Even after, there's nothing that comes along?
What do you mean?
As far as like further films that he started.
Harry Carey Jr. is in a ton
of
stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. This is kind of just, I just wanted to make a point saying it's not introducing him, but it is introducing him as far as maybe a big stage kind of.
Sure.
A bigger character role.
Yeah.
Because this was John Ford and his dad, Harry Carey Sr., were best friends, and he died the year before. So this film is also dedicated to Harry Carey.
That's the bit in the beginning where there's actually like a kind of a teary-eyed line. I forget what it says, but like "May the sun never set" or something like that.
Yeah, it's the brightest star in the western sky or something like that. So in the beginning, it says dedicated to Harry Carey, and then there's a horse riding on top of a hill with the backdrop of a sunset, and it says the bright star, shining star in the western sky.
Yeah.
And the guy riding the horse was like a famous stuntman that really got along with John Ford and Harry Carey.
Interesting.
And then when he gets to the top of the hill, the way he sits on the horse was the way Harry Carey would always sit on the horse.
Wow.
And so it was like a really nice tribute.
Yeah, absolutely. No less just having the sun in the production.
Right, and then putting Junior in there, which he did a fine job. But Pedro specifically, I thought was a great character.
Yeah, I'll be honest. At first, when I saw how heavy-handed some of the Spanish elements were, I was like, I don't know, is this dipping into like I don't know how modern art is to go look at it? But he wins you over, and there's something genuine about it as well.
Yes,
there really is. It's not just like a token character like someone might poke a critical aspect.
Exactly. And then the only other note, there's a judge in this movie.
Oh yeah.
The judge is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Love the judge.
I love that whole scene too because it's just like it's in the bar and it's just great.
Yeah, and he goes, okay, like case closed, bars open, double bourbon, bartender.
Yeah.
That was the last movie that the judge ever served in, by the way.
Wow.
Guy Kibbe, last time he ever acted.
He's down. Put him down. Well, yeah, I think for me, my own enjoyment, the most interesting elements were definitely in the first 30 minutes of the film when I kind of didn't know what was happening with it. But when the real story kind of takes center stage, it's something I expected, but also not something I can really fault the film for. It's just that it's telling the story as is. I don't think it's a bad movie by any means, and pairing it with the Western genre really goes for a creative spin because it's an old story that has survival stakes infused with it, has big personalities on screen infused with it, and whether it's directly kind of telling that Three Wise Men story or not, I feel like, once again, my appreciation for this is coming that the setting is, I don't know, it's being used in a way that is mindful, that the setting actually matters to this spin of the story. It's not just for the sake of making a Three Wise Men Western.
Right.
These aspects are playing into how our characters are depicted, the stakes, survival, genres, and comes out as a very unique experience with that. With that said, I don't know how high can I go to make sure that you're not disappointed. We're going to go ahead and give Three Godfathers 1948 a 68.
Okay, 68. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Okay.
I can tell by the way you were talking, that's where we're going to end up.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with that.
I think so.
Yeah. I don't know if it's actually going to be hurt a little bit if anybody goes and watch this, knowing where the film goes a little bit, that is based on Three Wise Men, because you don't really pick up on that until you're in the story a little bit.
That's a good point. And
that's what hit me across the head.
That's true. That's true.
But
maybe it is a spoiler in that regard.
No,
but,
all you got to do is read one line online.
You're right.
It's already said.
Yeah. I think for me as well, this does fit into a category that it was an interesting watch for the film buffs out there listening. That this was a story that was riffed on and adapted again and again and again.
Yep.
And without seeing the vast amount of them, this is definitely one of the best, if only by John Ford's mark.
Yeah.
So
excellent. Okay, so 68%, and I'll tell you right now, 2 shoes, and we're gonna lace one of those puppies up. I really like this film. I have fan theory crafting going on in my own head about this actual film. I kind of want to tell you, but. Because I like it, but
right,
yeah, 2 shoes, 1 lace. I mean, yeah, I liked it. I like the idea of it too. If you kind of like John Wayne or whatever, John Wayne adjacent, don't sleep on this one. This is one that you can add to the list if you're interested.
Absolutely.
Many people when they talk John Wayne, especially even critics today, because we're getting decades and decades further and further away from him, only go to the classics or the one that you always hear about. There's way more there, way more there in the arsenal.
Yeah.
So 68%, 2 shoes, 1 lace. I love it. Can I quick tell you my theory?
Sure.
We'll
Absolutely.
pause recording and just quick tell you.
Okay.
I think John Wayne.
Interesting.
All right, we're back. We're back now.
Okay. I like that, especially with. I'll give maybe one credit. His wardrobe change is very deliberate in that section as well. So maybe that adds to the credit of your fan theory. You gotta find a subreddit for 1948 films and then dive in.
Three Godfathers. Yeah. Secret Christmas movie, obviously, then too.
Yeah,
absolutely. Saying, but like absolute Christmas film.
Absolutely.
What I really loved, because I'm almost done with putting on the movies on the site. I have 2 more to go on from previous years before podcasts.
Okay.
One of the last ones I put on was Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
Right? So I watched Three Godfathers. The next film I watched after was Hateful Eight. And in both films, Silent Night is played on the piano. And I was like, this is the best.
There it is.
Sorry for the long review, folks. And I know it's John Wayne. I hope people might have been asleep. I was really hot on this film.
Yeah, I'm happy to cover it.
So, Chatty Cathy.
Yeah, no, I think it was a very interesting watch. And again, interesting in the sense of what's going on in the movie, interesting what's going outside of the movie as well, the story of its production.
Okay, with that, let's take a big old jump and get to some fun stuff here. We're going to 1996. This is Twister, singular, no S on the end.
Yeah.
Twister, starring Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton. Then let's get into it.
Twister, a movie I watched in meteorology class in high school and promptly forgot about. Because rewatching it this time, I barely remembered what happened in this film. This was directed in the brief time cinematographer Jan de Bont. Well, how'd you pronounce it?
I believe it's Jean.
Jean.
Jean de Bont.
Okay, I love it. You got it. Jean de Bont sat down in the black chair and left his mark on blockbuster Hollywood. He directed both Speed and Speed 2 Cruise Control. What a title. In 1994 and 1997, respectively. Two movies I actually have been kind of itching to watch. Just Speed 1, probably, to get on the site. But what I can kind of assume about them is that their pacing is excellent, not only in the obvious runaway bus scenario, but rather this film has the same snappy quality to it, never hurting its own momentum in the story, even when more kind of eye-rolling 90s bits come along. Mm-hmm. I feel really the takeaway for Twister 1 is that the pacing is kind of perfect. You know?
Yeah.
I feel like this just moves at trying to avoid calling it a breeze. Pun intended, but really pun not intended. I just call things moving, I call things breezy. But it really is that's the reason to watch this, because it's a snappy film and had me saying, wow, they just don't make them like they used to. They don't make them like this anymore.
That really is what you have to say.
Yeah. Twister is a romance, adventure, disaster film, and might be one of the biggest of its kind. I don't particularly like disaster films as a genre, which have countless examples of blockbuster schlock, but here, this goes beyond just being hot for the summer and then quickly forgotten. For all of its faults and dated 90s cheese, this film earns being called an adventure because of the mix in that description. Largely, it takes place over a breezy 36 hours and keeps us locked into storm-chasing action even when we do have to get backstory or romance. We're always in Tornado Alley, we're never not near a tornado, which is kind of just... I don't know. I feel like I might fault like a Michael Bay to say like, hey, take a break. But here, there's just such a rhythm about this movie that I really appreciated rewatching.
Yeah. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Because even when you think it's going to stop for too long, or maybe we get into some of the romance stuff or take a break, it never forgets what the film actually is.
Yeah.
And it's very good for that reason.
Absolutely. Bill Paxton plays a meteorologist with near magical storm sensing powers, which we'll touch on again for the sequel, which oddly enough becomes the thread that really ties these two movies together. While initially he meets up with his old storm-chasing crew to get his ex to sign divorce papers, he ends up going on a big adventure to hook up with his ex, played by Helen Hunt. And watch out, because his shirt buttons, folks, we lose one every 10 minutes.
This is an excellent observation.
Yeah, I mean, Pax, button up.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that personally, but you just saying it, it's like, wow,
like,
excellent.
Yeah. It is unreal. Helen Hunt gives our kind of emotional center to the film, and while we get plenty of eye-rolling moments out of me, adding this romance to the story is pretty smart to make the story much more about just capturing some data points on the thickest laptop you've ever seen in your life. Like, some of the tech was unreal.
Real point on the romance real quick.
Sure.
Because it's going to come up for the next film as well.
Yeah.
I like that the romance isn't set up like lovey-dovey romance where you all see where this is going a little bit. And even though you might see it's going, what happens is it's prickly. It's a prickly previous romance.
Yes.
And so we're getting more butting heads that need to be figured out. And that's a lot better than right away starting into some mushy-gushy.
Sure.
They give them the eyes, and now we're just waiting until...
Yeah,
they kiss and then they hug and then they dance and they kiss. You know what I mean? It's just,
right.
I like actually how the romance is staged in this.
Yeah. And I'm interested I think it's a great point bringing it up in context of the second one.
Yeah.
For the new release, because it feels like they try that, but so much simply fall into what you exactly described, the same old as far as going through the motions of that romance.
And how they set that up, where it's just like. I don't know, the way that this is set up with how they have a past together, and then right away they're just getting into an argument that is a very real argument almost.
Right.
I don't know. It's very well sold, I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. While it looks like Twister season is coming to a close, more and more violent storm activity keeps cropping up, and just maybe will give the team a chance to capture the data that makes a difference in the never-ending destruction of Tornado Alley. Folks, there is a jump scare in the first 20 minutes of this film, and it is all in that terrible 90s CGI. It's like, to me, it looks like the type of CGI you get in Independence Day when that dog is jumping through the fire. It's real bad.
Yeah.
But opening title and a very poor shot from space, it had me worried about the special effects. It goes away, thankfully.
Yeah.
It goes away in a big way. I would say big disaster blockbusters like this, they are a demo reel of VFX, of the latest techniques. So I feel like I kind of have to understand that with my approach to this genre, even though I'm not really a fan. But I think on the positive side, luckily, the team is pretty smart with the shots they have of the Twister on screen and absolutely understand that there's a challenge to presenting these type of VFX in their infantile state for the CGI. I'm happy to say the special effects come closer to the lessons learned in Jurassic Park, where artists understand it doesn't look awesome and have to overcome it in creative ways. Many close-up shots will be communicating the force of the tornado rather than showing it itself.
Right.
Classic is nails being pulled up on boards. They love lifting cars in this movie. They must have had a bunch of cranes just like, let's lift as many cars as we can. And, of course, the usual kind of disaster porn that comes with both of these films and really, really much defined by. Don't get me wrong. You still get plenty of floating cows, which feels like the Universal Studios ride it was meant to be. But more often than not, I found myself appreciating the tricks they use to distract rather than relying just on the CGI. You know what I mean?
And absolutely. And I think like the twisters in this film, the actual tornadoes themselves look phenomenal still.
Yeah.
And I love almost being, we're 28 years later and they still look great.
Sure.
I was really impressed with that. Now, when you get into where it falls apart and kind of falls off the screen is the debris around the tornado.
The cows.
Right, the cows, the floating debris and the wood and stuff. That's where it has definitely aged.
Yeah.
But the fact that the twisters themselves, even if you're dealing with people talking and it's in the background as you're looking through a window of the car or something like that, I got to hand it to you. I mean, it still holds up great.
Yeah. I was really impressed with it. And I think I was just more so than anything impressed to see a film production that kind of understood that might be a weak element in, even years down the road. And created creative ways to either communicate that without showing it directly. We always talk about the lesson learned in JP1 is show the dinosaurs at night, show them in rain. And they're going to look timeless, basically. So here there was some aspects of that. The whole film is very 90s, kind of falls into what I would call a career fair film, or at least a type of scientist-driven story that was so common in the wake of, you guessed it, Jurassic Park in 1993. You can also just feel it so much in the licensed soundtrack and the score of the film. This was done by Mark Mancina, who actually comes over from working on Speed with the Bond a few years earlier. It is a soft spot for me because I'm an avid fan of any use of Van Halen in any flick. I'll reference the Power Rangers movie as a guilty pleasure. But
he wrote a song for this.
Yeah, don't get me started on Eddie Van Halen shredding on these credits. The credit songs is called "Respect the Wind."
Yeah.
Need I say more? He's just like in his studio, just absolutely making that guitar cry. It is great. It's great. I don't know. What do you think about like the soundtrack and whatnot? Because it definitely felt like super 90s.
Yeah. There's parts of it I liked and parts of it I didn't. Same thing with the soundtrack for the new one as well. Part of it is just like, wow, it's nice to be in the 90s again.
Yeah, that score is so uplifting.
Right.
Yeah.
And then other parts it's just like, well, I'm glad we kind of dropped this from the 90s.
Yeah. It's like taking away some of the fear of the road twister.
Right.
Yeah. I think what makes this movie stand apart, though, from honestly, the countless copycats, especially with what the sequel fails to recapture, in my opinion, is a really, really dynamite cast with a surprising variety of faces that you're bound to recognize. There are, for sure, a lot of cheesy moments in the script, but it's never without purpose, either to charm you by being introduced to a scrappy, lovable crew, or once again, above all else, keep the pacing breezy, keep us moving on the plot. Philip Seymour Hoffman might make the whole movie for me. I didn't really expect that. It's like I commented back on our Boogie Nights review that he's just like, he has no fear about a role making him look like an idiot. Like, he's a smart dude, and, he'll do anything. You know what I mean? He leans into these characters. So I think while it could be annoying at first, I could definitely see someone getting annoyed with his role and just like how much screen time they give to this one out of the many characters. I feel like he just wins you over by the end, and most importantly, is a necessary key piece to actually making us like the crew, making the crew lovable, which is, again, a factor alongside the pacing that the sequel confusingly fumbles. I feel like if there was one thing to get right, or two things to get right in this instance, it's just this balancing act of what this film is able to achieve with lovability of the crew and just snappy pacing.
Yes.
That's the magic of Twister 1. So,
and it didn't shove. We all know within minutes, we know exactly who the crew is.
Yeah.
We know this guy's that guy, this guy's that guy.
Sure.
And it's not shoveled out in such an eye-rolly way, which I think the Twisters does.
Yes, it's like prescribed chemistry in the second one.
Yeah, it's just the way it's shoveled out. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Let us figure out a little bit or something like that.
Yeah, true.
But it is something where it's just like, oh, by the way, we don't really have much time to be with them because we're on to the next one. Here's another Twister. It's great.
Exactly. I could just go on and on about this film's pacing. It really was the biggest takeaway for me. But overall, though, folks, it is extremely 90s and extremely blockbuster. But even though that may be a mark of death for the daily ratings goes, it surprised me how much it captured a great energy and pacing to the story while still hitting the marks that I thought I would fault it for. I thought I would fault this for a romance, the romance elements. And like I said, there were some eye rolls, especially in the backstory for like Helen Hunt and whatnot. It was just kind of like, all right.
Right.
But when reflecting on it, it's just like, all right, without that, what would the story be? Them getting some data points and say, hey, great job, crew. That's it, Yeah. So I feel like this has a magic that blockbusters are able to capture that you can fault it for, but there's something achieved in the execution of it. So, like I said, apologies for the pun, but a very breezy watch and had me walking away saying they really don't make them like this anymore. We're going to go ahead and give Twister 1996 a 70 on the dot.
70 on the dot. Hey, pretty good.
Yeah. I think worth your time in modern day,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a blast going back, and it is getting a little bit of renaissance now, especially because this new one came out. People are going back, well, let's give that another watch.
Yeah.
I think 70 is really good. I'm not going to give it a score, but really like this film.
Sure.
I go way back with this film.
Oh, right,
in
right.
my old house.
Uh-huh.
We would always be at my, not nannies, but just the neighborhood babysitter.
Okay, got it.
And we would always eat sour cream and onion Utz chips and turn on Twisters towards the end of the day. And we get like
the Twister experience.
We get like 15 minutes in, and the next day we have to fast forward it because we watched it on VHS. So I just go way back with it. It was great returning to it. I don't think I've seen it in 20 years or over.
Sure, yeah.
Which is great, and it really does hold up for a modern day watch, which was excellent to see.
One quick aspect.
Yeah.
So something in actually after writing notes in a little bit of the research of what the chatter is between these two films.
Yeah.
An aspect that was completely lost on me between both of these is that Twister is supposed to be a semi-scary movie. The destruction of it. I guess that's a disaster film in essence. That was just lost. I just wasn't on that wavelength at all with this. Do you think that this one, at least right now, is functional in that way?
Yeah, I think it works. I think it works as a darker thriller. I think when it came out, we didn't really know a lot about Storm Chasers or this whole world.
Sure, it was novel.
It was news. It was when big things happened, we would hear about it.
Yep.
But even like Discovery Channel had that show of actual Storm Chasers, and it was all about, wow, what's their vehicle going to look like this year?
Yeah.
And
the wave of those type of shows.
Right, it was more in kind of the culture and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, back then in '96, it was a little bit more unknown. You know, some of the production stuff is still great though, and that's why it holds up so well. I mean, just what they did to film some of the shots.
Sure,
everyone got beat up a little bit, even by like flying debris.
Oh,
Helen
really?
got a concussion.
Wow,
kind of crazy stuff like that. And it was, by the way, I think it was the first DVD sold in America.
Really?
Or one of the first ones. But
very interesting.
Excellent. It gets lost because the 90s are so good for movies. I think it gets lost a little bit, and Bill Paxton does a great job. I think Bill Paxton is like this great goofy guy, but he sells his character. So Tom Hanks read for the character.
Oh, really?
He picked the wardrobe and everything.
Wow.
That Bill Paxton ended up taking.
Yeah.
But that's how far he got in the process.
Wow.
And then he let go of the role and said, hey, you should get Bill Paxton for this. Wow. I think he does a great job.
Yeah, I do as well. I think it's one of those where, like, Bill Paxton is always really interesting supporting character-wise. It's one for him, you know?
Yep.
And those buttons that he loses.
Excellent, Ben. Okay, so 70% for Twister. And real quick, I'm not going to play the music, but we're going to go into a producer segment because we do have a producer to thank.
Oh.
Linda Schiller came in once again.
Oh, wow.
And she donated. She gave you a movie ticket. And in fact, it was about $12 and change because she did the PayPal transfer fee.
Wow, that
is
is
always much appreciated.
Yeah, this is the biggest courtesy we have. That's the handshake.
But Linda, we have to thank you so much. The reason I'm not playing the music is because no note this week. Remember, if you want to send us a note, tom.vin@thedailyratings.com. You can email us there if you have something to say, something to ask us. Linda, a few weeks ago, though, did write in and produced before.
A great note as well around Brando.
Maybe this is like I don't know, a reminder. A little, it's just like, hey,
didn't see this one on the ratings yet. I'm watching the site.
Let's not forget about Sayonara here, okay?
Yeah.
But Linda, thank you so much for donating. And people, we've had a couple donations in and no notes, and it's like, hey, they're actually getting value from the daily ratings and letting us know that and giving value back, which is huge. So,
absolutely.
Linda, thank you so much for your movie ticket. You are executive producer of episode 144. You continue to be a producer of the Daily Ratings. Folks at home, if you want to become a producer of the Daily Ratings, we're going off the value for value model here. So we're not going to have any advertising thrown at you. We're not going to have any paywalls on the site. No tier structures, like payment tier structures. It's not pay to access our content. Vin and I have the podcast and the website. It's all out there for you, everything that we do. But the idea is that if you're finding it valuable, so are you listening to the podcast? Are you using the website? You know, we think of it as this kind of value in your pocket. Can you send us value back in our pocket? And that's through monetary support. So you go to thedailyratings.com and you go to the donations tab, and everything's laid out right there, whether you want to do PayPal or Satoshis, if you're into that with Bitcoin, or even Venmo. Our link is right there for Venmo. Any way you would want to donate in, it's all there for you. And through your monetary support, you become a legitimate producer of the Daily Ratings, just like Linda this episode. Because just like in Hollywood, when you financially support a project, you become a producer of that project. So we want to thank all the producers who have produced in the past. Like I said, Linda, episode 144, executive producer. If you want to be a producer for episode 145, just head on to thedailyratings.com. All right, folks. And with that, let's keep things moving, Vin. We'll go to our now in theaters film.
The big release.
This is Twister's shattering, blowing through box office expectations. This first was set to have around 50 million opening.
Okay.
Then I read headlines saying just like Twister's isn't going to do well. The predictions are being lowered to around 35, 38 million.
Right.
Then they got raised again to around 50, 55 million.
Wow.
Film ended up making $81 million.
Wow.
Just busting through expectations.
There it is. The Glenn Powell effect.
And one quick, I was reading a report on, I think it was Variety had it, just real quick before we get into it. 1/4 or 1/3 of the people said they bought the ticket for Glenn Powell because they wanted to see what he did as he's rising in fame. And another really cool thing, which why it blew past expectations, which no one was expecting, was America's heartland.
Oh, really?
Yeah, what we call flyover states. It came out in force because it's Twisters.
Sure, it's Tornado Alley.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Typically, the best money-making cities are New York and then Los Angeles.
Sure.
Clearly. The number one market this weekend was Oklahoma City.
Wow.
Which is awesome. I think Knoxville or
Gotta
something
rep
like that
it.
did really well.
Yeah.
Dallas did really well.
Wow.
And it's like, Word.
Yeah.
I really So, yeah, I just think it's great. I'm glad this movie is doing well, even though I don't know how hot we are on it.
Yeah.
With that, why don't we jump into it, Vin? Break it down. We'll take it back and forth.
Sure. Well, I do have to start with taking back my Nepo Baby comment last week. The internet is not known for going back on their words, so... and they're not known for admitting when they're wrong, but I do have to admit I was wrong. Glenn Powell does not come from any sort of famous parents. I was a little hot on the trigger of Nepo Baby.
You've said it often throughout the weeks. I didn't understand it. And you've always had a little Glenn Powell hate in you. But
yeah.
I'm glad that maybe the tide's changing.
Yeah. I think where I'm coming from and why I can't stand his stupid face is just like we saw with Hollywood PR teams pushing Sydney Sweeney down our throats this year. Glenn Powell isn't too far behind with, once again, I mean, a face that looks closer to a boardwalk drawing than a real person. But I'd be lying to say if he was the main problem in this movie, because he's far from the main problem. Yeah. And if anything, he might be the only thing saving this movie.
Yes.
TikTok girlies and everyone interested in Glenn Powell, you can be happy to know that go to the theater and your boy is not our boy.
Well, I'm excited for next week when he cover The Killer then. His Linklater film he just came out with.
Right. I'd like to include this in my hot take from our Top Gun Maverick review in the type of legacy sequel this spits out as. While it might not be an 80s property like I originally predicted, it still has the type of revival where original campy fun is stripped out, replaced by trauma-dumping melodrama and nostalgia grabs.
Yeah.
That, I think, is the formula, the Maverick formula. And among the many aspects I could highlight, critically, that excellent pacing is what is lost from the first film, exchanging for more of a emotional storyline, but without a doubt, a plot that gets stuck in the mud more than often. Twisters is once again the romance disaster film we expected it to be, but I would exchange that adventure vibe with more sprinklings of mystery that our characters unpack. There's this element of mystery. I mean, I guess it could be an adventure as well. We're getting into 5 word long descriptions, but it felt like where adventure was a driver, mystery was the driver, and in a lot of scenes here of unpacking, characters' pasts, what characters' angles are, and our characters' involvement in like the storm chasing environment.
Yeah.
It's also important to note that this is less of a sequel and more of a successor with no returning characters from the original. Maybe in that way it kind of separates itself from Top Gun Maverick, that it's not overly nostalgic. I don't know. Did I maybe miss?
No. You're right in that, and I think it could have been better had it tied a little bit better to the first film.
Yeah, like what's Helen Hunt doing? You know what I mean?
It would be great to do something with Helen Hunt, and then also you could have a very sad moment, almost like a Tom Cruise, Val Kilmer moment in Maverick,
right? With
Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton tragically dying in real life.
Yeah.
Could also tie it in the movie that would like get people going in the theater a little bit, for something that's actually happening.
Absolutely,
Val Kilmer in real life and what's going on with him and stuff.
100%
being reunited with Tom Cruise. I don't think it's a direct comparison, the Maverick to the redo of Twisters. I get what you're saying, and I think the way you explained it as far as doing melodramatic dumps, trying to get new characters in there, kind of
specifically at the cost of campy fun that you get in the original.
Absolutely, and so I do agree with that kind of logic behind it. But there are way more ties of Top Gun 1 to 2 with Twisters. I think there's a lot more tethered there that people are not quite picking up on or not talking about. There are, if you want to call them love letters, kind of Easter eggs. But there are a little bit more through lines in a few different ways that keeps it attached to Twister a little bit. But nothing like Glenn Powell is Bill Paxton's son.
Right. Yeah, characters that gets removed from.
Yeah.
So we open up with a group of storm chasers looking to secure a grant, led by Daisy Edgar Jones playing Kate. And her inheriting Bill Paxton's superpower from the last film, sensing tornadoes on the wind. I mean, honestly, if there's the biggest hurdle in logic between both of these films, it's that. They get a rude awakening by an F5 twister, and next thing you know, we jump 5 years into the future to see Kate reluctantly pulled into another tornado outfit. Right off the bat, you can see how this shoots its own pacing in the foot. Kate is emotionally scarred by these events in the past, making her involvement with storm chasing more of a source of pain rather than fun and exciting, translated for the character, translated to the audience. And this new team that she's a part of is an equal stick in the mud when it comes to the energy around this disaster plot. They're all like buttoned up scientists, and that we need to reintroduce this character into the world of excitement she's getting involved in. I think that's a slip, but excitement isn't entirely lost, as this buttoned-up science outfit has to deal with the Tornado Wranglers, a loud and proud social media storm-chasing team led by, you guessed it, Glenn Powell. Sparks fly between Daisy and Glenn as a friendly rivalry forms in chasing tornadoes, and once again gives this story something beyond just getting some data on a laptop. I guess we'll start with VFX.
Sure, go for it.
Just because I think that's pretty positive there. I think everything looks, as far as like modern CGI goes. What?
No, that's it right there. As far as modern CGI goes.
Sure. I think it's above the curve. It's ahead of the curve as far as modern CGI goes. Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, I think it's good, but for some reason it has this tinge, this sniff, this smell of modern day CGI.
Yeah.
And there is something lost in realness or reality to the audience.
Yeah.
Right before the film started, I don't even know if he heard me because it was kind of loud, but I was like, oh, I like that this is shot on film.
Yes.
Because it's shot on film. And I think that matters with mixing with CGI and with just the movie looking better and a little bit more realistic. I like that we're really shooting in Oklahoma and stuff, or at least somewhere, you know what I mean?
Clear
on location.
Results in the box office as well.
And, so it is good, but there's always going to be, there's an asterisk still.
Yeah.
Because something is still lost.
Sure.
Where I can't even take it as seriously, or I'm not as in fear for the characters' lives as I am with the original Twister.
Interesting. I think, I don't know, maybe an element there is that they go a little too ham with the particle effects. I feel like the amount of what was previously a floating car or one flying cow is now billions of small little particle effects to these twisters. Certainly looks threatening, but I don't know. Maybe that's that artificial vibe that you're getting into.
Maybe. I mean, it's good. The effects were good. I guess I don't want to shit on it too much.
This is leagues beyond when we criticize current CGI and that, it's kind of like rush production.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Specifically around sound design, I feel like that was a highlight here, and probably is a treat for actual theater watch of this, if you're interested. The real highlight are just these little touches to overcome VFX in the last film. These sound design touches I felt were that type of little addition that made and sold the destruction for us.
Okay, so you're talking about actual sound effects, not
the wind, directionality of where the sound is coming from.
It's a good film to go see it in Dolby Atmos or in IMAX or fake IMAX or something like that. It's definitely helped because you're right. It worked pretty well.
Yeah. I think that's just as much as a point to sell the fantasy of this Twister.
Two quick notes, too. I'm not really for this and never experienced this before, but this would be the film of 4DX cinemas.
Oh, right.
Where, you turn
like
on
shaky.
the water feature, the chairs rumble.
I'm so against that, by the way.
Even some wind. This is the one.
Yeah, I guess so.
Twisters would be the one to be a little bit, ingrained in a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
that's a very good point. I don't know what else would make a case for 4DX.
Not too much.
Transformers, you smell some oil.
No.
Or
The Twisters, literally disaster films. I think it would work for this, and they actually did. It actually was a very good weekend for 4DX film, or for theaters. And one other note about the sound too, because I read this for the original Twister. Apparently, the sound was really quite good in THX and everything like that, because they wanted the sound effects to be loud in there. That the amount of bass needed, it broke a lot of sound systems in theaters across the country.
Wow.
The original Twisters.
That's pretty awesome.
Which was pretty good.
Yeah. This also does feature a lot of drone and handheld phone shots as a result of the kind of YouTuber vlog lifestyle of the Tornado Wranglers. And while I wasn't too big of a fan of them, if anything, distracting from these moments on film, it at least made sense why it was used in the movie, which is a lot more credit than I can give to every mom and pop drone shot that pops up and now, an establishing shot of your story in like every movie.
Yeah.
I feel like drone shots, I'm for them. I just would like, just like my bugaboos with the music, I would just like a reason why we're seeing or experiencing this.
And I would say, and also change that to GoPros as well. Or the handheld Red cameras.
Absolutely.
There's a disastrous scene in one of the Hobbit movies.
Yes.
Where all of a sudden we're going from like decent, good Red cameras, like digital, and then we're doing like GoPros. And it is jarring to see on screen.
Absolutely.
With this, it works because we're dealing with YouTubers.
Yeah, that story element was enough for me. Like, okay, I'm fine, even if I don't like the quality of these shots all the time.
Right.
I'm fine with it for the story implementation.
It's sound logic.
Yeah, exactly. So, other than that, though, almost every aspect of this film, I was bored to tears with. I can't lie. Which is not great for a disaster movie. You know what I mean? I as much as I don't like the genre, I wouldn't call them boring per se. I would call them sloppy and schlocky and a bunch of other things.
It isn't supposed to be boring at all.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a popcorn movie.
Yeah. Like I said already, pacing is much more generic and so much less of an adventurous ride of the first film. I'm not saying this has to be the same movie, but or even have the breakneck pace of like a day and a half plot line, but so much time is spent on emotional garbage and emotional baggage that it just means it results in nothing. I feel like I got nothing from the trauma digging up that this film concerned itself with to such a high degree,
Especially where we see it going.
Yeah.
And not only do we see it going this way, you're taking away from what we're there for.
Yeah.
Like in that first Twisters one, because it's on such a clip, such a fast pace that we're dealing with like 5 Twisters in one day.
Yeah.
We don't even have time to even stick with this for too long.
Right.
Here, it gives you the runway to kind of open that envelope of the people, of the personal stories, and it does. It drags. One great thing about Twister is that we get to know the relationships between the people, oftentimes in the action.
Yes.
Or right outside the action.
Absolutely.
And with this, it's like, no. Let's calm things down and give
Let's do this 5-year jump,
Right. It's just like no.
Been there, done that,
we don't
most
need,
of all.
Right. We don't need 10 minutes, 15 minutes between Twisters or anything like that. Don't explore it in the action.
Yeah.
And not only that, because it hits a little bit more too.
Absolutely.
So much of Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt's chemistry comes, and we're finding out a lot about them
it's
in
on
and
the
around
ride.
the action.
Yeah, absolutely. And even to the point of it being hard to take serious, the radio between the crew always being on, so everyone is then filled in on what's happening.
It doesn't mess around.
Doesn't make sense, but hey, we're keeping going. Ends justify the means. On that note, I think the random crew characters in this just suck.
Weak as hell.
Yeah, and there was even I'm forgetting her name. What's her face from Love Lies Bleeding?
Yes, she was in it.
I'm excited to see specific ones too, but I'm sad to say that this counts for both sides of our group. Largely, the writing fails them here. I don't know if it's necessarily like the acting performances, but for me, the writing was sending it off of like it just feels like forced fake charisma or forced group chemistry, and I don't know.
Gosh, yeah.
I'm not really an expert when it comes to like that element of anything, but I don't know how you dissect what worked in the first one and why it doesn't work in this one, but I know it feels fake,
And in the first one, it feels better. Now, in the first one, it still is a little contrived. It is a little shoveled out there, absolutely.
If anything,
with the way people are dressed and things like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
With this one, it's so heavy-handed, it's annoying. I got to bring up a pet peeve of mine for movies across the board, and I think this is what hurts me, and I'll just... Talking a lot this episode, that's okay. And take us on another tangent.
It's great.
I just don't do...
this is what happens when you do your homework.
This whole crew aspect of any film is a big problem for me.
What do you mean?
I think this is my issue with so many sci-fis.
Oh, okay.
When we're dealing with a ship, because right away, hey, this guy's the silly guy.
Oh,
this guy's the weirdo. This guy's the tech guy. This guy's the badass.
Yep.
This guy's the thick muscle. And you need to define the characters so the way it's ham-fisted or heavy-fisted, whatever,
Yep, at a glance.
shoveled down our throats, makes
Yeah.
it feel fake, makes it feel forced, makes it feel unbelievable. Philip Seymour Hoffman, although given a very obvious stereotypical role, was able to do something with it. With this one, it is shoved down with this whole home video camera crap. I don't do that. I just don't do it. I can't do it. I can't stand. Well, we got this guy. We're letting you know this is their characters.
Yeah. Oh, this guy's hungover. It's just
It's so forced. It's so eye rolly. I can't do it, and that's why I can't do
Absolutely.
these space things. Like what was the Alien movie with?
Well, I mean, you're kind of setting your sights on Alien
Every
as a
movie, yeah.
franchise because that's every alien.
Single alien.
Especially
Let's meet
aliens.
the crew. And I don't do it. I don't have a stomach for any of it.
Interesting. I can't say I'm 100% with you, but absolutely, I understand that. I think that's, again, I don't know what it boils down to of why it feels fake or when it feels real.
Forced.
Yeah, but it's just in that element of just like it's forced or too blasé. It's too quick to say like, oh, this character is that stereotype.
It's throwaway lines.
Yeah.
It's down to their dress even just doesn't feel. I have a big problem with casting in this film.
Really?
It's probably my biggest bugaboo. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I just don't think that helps the roles. And I think it's a thing of, I don't know if it was ever an art, but whatever it's being done in modern day Hollywood, this whole group aspect and trying to define who the stereotypical characters are is done poorly.
Yeah.
It's just done poorly these days.
Absolutely. Or maybe it's just trying to capture that 90s vibe and it just, I don't know.
Do it through the action.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't through it from a cheesy home video.
Absolutely. I love that. Do it through the action. That's a t-shirt for the daily ratings. The setup swaps the energies of our characters from the original. Our main crew are the sticks in the mud, and the wild and fun tornado wranglers are at the end of the story.
Yeah.
This is a huge mistake, though, because you lose the starting rhythm. Once again, Kate, Daisy Edgar-Jones' character, she has to overcome some trauma getting reintroduced to it. Fine if you want to make it a little bit more emotionally heavy, but the reintroduction to the world of storm chasing should be exciting. Because guess what? Who needs to be excited by that? Us, as the audience.
Yes. First one does it great.
Yeah.
Bill Paxton's just trying to get his divorce papers signed.
Exactly.
And then in
to
5
the point
minutes,
that his, the fiance is our, our eyes of like, wow, how crazy is this? But she's along for the ride.
Right.
Yeah, apologies, I forget what the actress was, or what her name was, but it's just such a I don't know, how do you get something so fundamentally wrong in the approach of like we need to make a sequel 20 some years later. And the inclusion of this is really, when it comes down to casting, my problem with the inclusion of Transformers Beast War actor Anthony Ramos wasn't a good sign. And he comes along, if anything, as an artifact from Transformers, with a lot of techno-babble here. So many meaningless explanations of what weather or tech is doing. The amount of stilted lines we get out of nearly everyone, but him specifically, spewing out a type of jargon around either weather or tech or what's going on here, it's enough to make my head explode. Like, it was just so much garbage. There's a scene where they literally use a program with 2 input fields and it solves the mystery at some point.
I love this angle that you're taking this.
Yeah. I just had a problem with, this was a program that Glenn Powell uses on the regular, and it was just like, oh, that's exactly what we need. And this movie, man, it's a series where the correct answer is picking up grass and letting the wind blow it in the right direction. Like, understand your own brand a little bit here. Understand what you're stepping in. So it's just like the amount of tech involved in this. I get it's a 2024 film. They want to maybe, even funding-wise, demonstrate some deals that they have. Whether it's the cars or something like that. But just it lost its way in this garbage explanations that do nothing for
throwaway stuff. Yeah. I mean, my biggest thing with the techno-babble was very generic.
Yeah.
So I was feeling that a little bit. I like that you were picking up on those like real nuances.
Yeah.
My biggest thing, especially with this Anthony Ramos, one, he is a very solid third leading character. He's in it a lot. I just think I couldn't stand every single line that he delivered.
Yeah.
I think some of that's on the writing, some of that's on him, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And also, just these emotional beats. Show me emotion through the action. And Anthony Momo's trying to be like, I don't know, heavy with stuff or try to lay down
Yeah.
like when she's trying to get Daisy Edgar-Jones' character to like come with it. It's just, it's eye-rolly horse crap.
Yeah.
It's just really not good. Not good at all.
Yeah, and so true in what you're getting at, because there are moments where she, as the character Kate, is dipping into maybe having some fun again via Glenn Powell.
Yeah.
And then he's now this ball and chain on the fun that the movie wants to have.
Yeah.
And it's just like, ay.
And the acting isn't great.
Yeah. Like I said in the beginning, though, surprisingly, Glenn Powell was far from the worst, and really might have been the only thing from keeping me from falling asleep in the theater. I really like.
Sad to say.
Yeah, it's sad to say, and especially when I was like, I mean, you know, Tom, I was gearing up for weeks to shit on Glenn Powell.
You let down in two ways. Let down by the movie.
Exactly. I was just like, he's actually a pretty good guy. It's like I met him and now I can't. But despite enjoying Daisy Edgar-Jones in a few of the films we covered, we did Crawdads.
Which you didn't like.
Yeah, not great. Not my bag, though, admittedly. And we did Fresh, which was, all right. I hate to say it here, but she was really the center of everything that just didn't work in this. Because whether it's in the acting or whether it's just burdened by all these aspects that we've talked about so far, she was much more the main center character than previously, where you can kind of see the first Twister as Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton kind of sharing the forward romance.
Right.
With Daisy Edgar-Jones, it's just like this emotional melodrama, the trauma sharing between characters, the social awareness spin that just stripped so much enjoyment out of the movie. She was the centerpiece of all of this, and I'm a little bit conflicted, because it's just like, I don't know if it was her acting or just everything around the film that she was just the focal point.
Okay, so this is where I'm at with her.
Yeah.
So I was worried watching. First of all, this was one of my most anticipated movies of the year.
Right.
But even in the trailers, my concern was generic movie and her. So I can't say that she outwardly did bad things. I mean, she's a London gal, so she's doing like an Oklahoma-ish accent.
Sure.
And I think she's doing an accent pretty well. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think she didn't break once, it seemed like. So she's pulling that down fine. I think her acting is fine. I think it's a terrible miscast. I don't think she is deserving of this role.
Really?
And not saying that she's not talented enough. She has talent, but I don't think she should play this character. The character to me,
Maybe another character in the crew, but
yeah, she's not believable to me, and I don't know if it's like she's not. I don't know if she's too like thin or scrawny, but I don't know if I don't like the way the character was written or portrayed, and it really a lot comes down to just like her physical acting. The way she actually just kind of looks, her voice doesn't fit the character, where I think Helen Hunt did a very good job at making us believe that she deserved to be portraying this character.
Sure, this homegrown storm chaser.
Yeah, Daisy Edgar-Jones does not appear to be some Twister-chasing Oklahoma gal.
Yeah.
And that's what she needed to be. It's not what she is. She's not selling the character. And I don't think it's her fault.
Yeah.
I think she's just meant for other roles. Not this role.
Sure.
Not this role at all.
Sure. And that's also where I'm, kind of conflicted, because I don't know if to point the finger to her, but she's at the center of all my problems. A great example of this is when the romance is kicking off with Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar-Jones. Powell takes her to like a good old-fashioned rodeo. It's got the music in it. It's trying to be an electric scene. It's supposed to be in screenwriting this fun, like, oh, wow, this romance is now showing me that there's maybe something to open me up a little bit. There's something to make me enjoy and get past this trauma a little bit. How is the scene written? He goes, have you ever been to one of these? She goes, yeah, I've been here. Like, I was actually born on a farm. And it's just like, stop. Like, just, I don't know, lie. Just to have fun. Like, I don't know. It just felt like...
I love that this was bothering you.
Yeah, it's just like, it's in the script of it, she was always the downer. She was what... The forward or the downward momentum to stick in the mud. And then all the other stuff was keeping it in the mud, But yeah, and that's I hate to dig in so specifically, but if anything, I don't know if it's entirely there. I feel like there's just she's the center point of a lot of my issues with the film. But maybe worst of all, folks, the end product comes out as a blandly acceptable experience that you'll probably forget by the end of the month, no less the end of the summer, which is so the opposite of what Twister was originally. We're going to go ahead and give Twisters a 50 on the dot.
50 on the dot, cheeky score.
Cheeky.
Really, 50 on the dot.
I think so. Because
I respect this.
I think there's a viewing of this that you say like, oh yeah, they're going to get together eventually, and she's going to get past these things eventually, and there's a big twister on screen,
right?
And that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the experience, which is kind of the movie. You know,
it is. And I got to say, and in the beginning of the show, I was saying that I think we're against the grain on this.
Yeah.
Because man, I'm looking at people are loving this
loving
film.
it.
People have like really. I typically kind of lean with when it comes to reviews or thoughts on movies. Mm-hmm. I'm like against everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I cannot believe how much love this is getting, and I'm thinking, is it me? Like, what issue do I have with it? What's Vin and I missing? But I think there's so much.
There was one specifically that was just like he called it like great and the best movie you saw in 3 years. I was like,
it's the right thing. Yeah,
what?
It doesn't make any sense. Like I really think like tame expectations a little bit.
Yeah.
Because by the trailers were kind of getting me down a little bit, but the week of I'm like, let's do it. Like,
yeah, sure.
My expectations were being a little low. It's like, hey, surprise me.
Yeah.
And it just didn't hit in a certain way. Real quick to Top Gun Maverick. The end of Top Gun Maverick is electric.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Sure.
And real jets, yada yada, of course. The end of this,
take it or leave it.
I was really not enthralled with it at all.
Yeah.
I thought the ending, not that it was flat. They tried to go slam bam.
Yeah, definitely did.
And went like, okay. There was something visually not clicking. There was just even story-wise not clicking. Again, the complete, how you knew how it was going to go was disappointing. And I also think the movie was hurt because each Twister movie here, the whole reason why this film exists or what these scientists are doing is towards a goal. Something that has to do with the Twister itself is why we're analyzing the Twister.
Yes.
And the first one,
the
way
data.
better than the second one. First one, like what the goal of the first one is very good and makes sense.
Yep.
The second one, it's like, are you kidding me? This is what you're doing?
Yeah, almost superhero.
Just drumfuls of baby diaper powder. Okay, and I'll leave it at that. It's just no, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's where I was tuning out the technobabble because there's that included into it. Because now is like, all right,
So 50%, I think that's totally fine. I think this might be the last. I'm gonna maybe break the rule of every time we see a movie, I have to give a rating. Between the John Waynes of me seeing more movies, it's too much. I don't want to flood the two shoes.
Sure.
It's something that should be a little bit less.
Right.
I'm going to give it this time, and we'll see if we continue to see these many movies together.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have to tone it down a little bit. But Twisters gets one shoe. So on the new scale, because it's really the new 0 shoe, flip-flop, 1 shoe, 2 shoe, 2 shoe, 1 lace, 2 shoe, 2 lace. So this is essentially 2 stars out of 5. Yeah, just 1 shoe, just because we walked out disappointed.
Yeah.
It didn't ruin the breakfast that we had afterwards.
We had a great breakfast.
But it was lackluster. And I think 50 is good because there's something, some people are really enjoying this. Some people are really loving this film.
Yeah.
Surprises the hell out of me.
Absolutely.
And I hope you do see it. By the way, if we're going to have a movie that we kind of find schlocky do well, I'm glad it's this film.
Really?
And I'm glad it's not a classic Marvel or it's something else.
Interesting.
Because there's elements of this and where it's at. Like, same reason why I love that the leading city for money is Oklahoma City.
You're right.
Underdog. It is a somewhat different kind of movie.
Sure.
This is not Marvel-esque schlock. It is trying to be its own thing. It's shot on film, which no other, you know what I mean? It usually wouldn't be done that way.
Right.
There's elements of it. I appreciate it. I'm glad it's doing well, but it's just not that great of a movie.
Yeah.
And that's 50% right there.
And again, boring on a disaster film, I feel like is it's Achilles' heel. It's that's
we were giving each other looks in the theater.
Yeah. It's unreal.
Okay. All right. So As always, hey, if you want to disagree with us or you can't, if you got some other enlightened thought that we're missing here, would love to hear it. Donate.
Tornado Alley. Collectively donate in.
But okay, Vin, before we finish up here, any finishing notes, things for next week, or roll credits?
Well, next week, of course, is the 3 Deadpool slot. We won't be doing a John Wayne just because a little pressed for time, but mainly, I mean, the media circuit around Deadpool has been massive.
Months long,
but also like scaling. I feel like it's been ramping up even more. So I mean, the best thing I'll have to say is that I'm rooting for Marvel's approach in having one MCU film a year.
Yes.
That feels very refreshing.
Yeah.
Like, very refreshing. But in some of the pre-work that I've done, I think I was definitely looking back with rose-tinted glasses on some of the Deadpools. So I'll be a contrarian as usual, but that's about it.
All right. Excellent, Vin. Vin, thank you. A long episode for 3 movies. Hope people enjoyed it. We sure did. So, folks at home, thank you, Vin, for watching these. Thanks for stopping by tonight. And we'll run it down one more time. We have 3 Godfathers with 68% and a 2 shoes and a lace. We have Twister with a 70% and Twisters with a 50% and a 1 shoe. So, folks, thank you so much for listening here, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast. Hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or get the word out and tell a friend about us. And just a reminder that the Daily Ratings is completely producer-supported. We want to stay away from advertising, and we don't want to have any paywalls or tier structures or subscriptions. It's all just value for value. So, are you finding value in any of the things that we're doing here at the Daily Ratings? Then become a producer and donate whatever amount of value that is. Just go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com, and while you're there, be sure to check out the massive amount of films that Vince has rated. So thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast.